Hello, welcome to Death of Funny Business on a Tuesday. Surprise, Tash isn't here. She is sick.
Oh.
Poor Tash. We all send our love to Tash. But you are here with Becky, Briggs and Tanya Wilkinson. Hello.
Hi, Becky.
But you're
Lovely
not
to be back.
You're not new. I don't know you. I feel like I don't know you very well. But you're not new to the show.
Not new to the show. I've been a guest, and then I co-presented when you were off a few weeks ago now. So it's wonderful to be back. Always a joy to just be in this space.
It's a nice space, isn't it?
Oh, it's lovely.
Just to let everyone know, I just walked in sweating, so I feel a little bit chaotic. I had a 9 to 5 emergency, and then I ran to the studio. So I'm actually feeling quite pumped and ready for today. Ready for some good chats. And we've got, we're interviewing Lisa Marshall today. And she'll be chatting about her husband, Alan, who died by suicide, really sadly, in March 2023, on his way home from work. And she's going to tell us about her story and how that's impacted her. And then we've also got some other kind of different news about a dog.
Yes, about a dog. The dog that the world is talking about right now. It's Lewis Hamilton's dog. So this means a lot to me. It's where my worlds actually collide.
Okay.
Because I used to work in Formula One. So I used to be one of the heads of marketing in Formula One. Actually worked with Lewis on a few different things. And now I'm a grief coach. So literally today or yesterday, my worlds just went poof together.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, let me dive into this because everybody's talking about it. It's headline news. It's had Ferrari, Lewis's team, and Formula One themselves who've posted about Rosco, his dog.
Rosco?
Yeah, Rosco.
What kind of dog is Rosco?
Bulldog.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful bulldog. And Lewis has always spoken really openly about his dogs, but also his grief. So Rosco had a sister called Coco, who died a few years ago. And with Rosco this time, actually, what's been really beautiful is seeing how it's all played out. So Ferrari, actually, there was a tyre test that was happening over the weekend, which normally in Formula One, if there's something like that, you can't get out of it for anything. But Ferrari said, go be with Rosco when Rosco was having treatment. And I think they put him into an induced coma. And he was obviously life or death. And unfortunately, then over the weekend, the decision was made to put him to sleep. And actually, Lewis has spoken really openly about that and also about how complicated it is when it comes to pets and the choices that we actually have to make that are just heart-wrenching and so, so difficult.
We've had a pet counsellor on here on the show, actually. I think that was a while ago. And it was really eye-opening because I think, especially if you haven't had a pet, you don't understand what it feels like to lose someone. But, also with a pet, they're family, right?
Yeah.
They're so great to have around, but also a great way to learn how to respond to a death or a loss of somebody. So they're great for many reasons. But have you had a pet? Have you lost a pet?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I've got 2 dogs at the moment, 2 rescue pups. My first dog, I waited 35 years to have dogs. But when I was a kid, I had guinea pigs. And I do remember that sense of you should be over it by now. And actually, my first memory of grief is for a hedgehog that had died in the garden. It was the first thing that I ever seen that was dead. And with that, it was within 24 hours. My mum was like, stop crying. It's a bloody hedgehog was the vibe. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So actually, I think there's a lot that we can learn as well about grief, about the process when we go through it. I suppose when we're kids, it perhaps for a lot of children, I think might be, like for me, it was that first rite of passage when it came to this, which just wasn't handled very well. But how about you with pets?
I had a gerbil called Abby. I had 2, Abby and Frida. They both died, and it was really traumatic. It was definitely a day off school. But don't think I really understood what it meant when they died. I think, there's so, like you said, there's so many lessons that we can learn around that. Now, I am intrigued by your story, and I know you've been on here and you've explained it, but it only feels right to kind of... Hi, Tanya. This is lovely that you're here. What do you want to kind of tell me a little bit about your story and what you've kind of been through in this grief space that we're in, and also a little about this F1 industry, because this is cool. Yeah.
So in the grief space, the grief club that we are all a part of, and none of us want to be a member of.
Absolutely.
For me, actually, grief, other than my guinea pigs, grief for people who are immediately very close to me hit me later in life. So it was when I was 35 and my granddad died, and I just left Formula One, actually. And it was actually the grief of, actually before that, it was the grief of a miscarriage, an early miscarriage, that was the lightning bolt moment that made me think, what am I doing here? Don't get me wrong, the job was amazing in so many ways, but it actually shone a spotlight on where I am at and what I'm doing isn't in alignment with me, and it's time for me to step aside and let someone else take my space. So I did just that. Then accompanied my granddad on his journey in his final year and really got close to death in that space. And then very soon after that, I was pregnant, and unfortunately our daughter, we lost her 5 months into pregnancy because we had to go through what's called a termination for medical reasons, because she had a birth defect that basically was incompatible with her being able to survive more than, I think it was about 36 hours outside of the womb. So it was a lot. It was a big initiation into the grief space. But I always say that actually her legacy is my legacy, and I'm really living that now. So she's really inspired me to go deeper into my curiosity about death and grief. And I've retrained as a grief coach. So I do that. I do a lot of work, whether it's with individuals, in corporates, as well as creating platforms of purpose with high-profile people around this space of grief and loss. So it's my passion, it's my purpose. And I think for a lot of us, that's where we find ourselves, isn't it? We really, death and grief can open up a lot. And for some of us, it's actually, I want to go deeper into this grief space, much like you and Tash are obviously doing as well.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. That's awful. Really heavy. It's difficult to kind of know what to say sometimes when you obviously have gone through a different type of loss.
Yeah.
So I think there's, it still comes together under grief, but I know that you would have experienced that very differently. Can I ask, have you lost anyone, as you said, have you lost anyone like kind of living before? Like obviously your baby inside you, but have you also lost someone, like a family member or friend?
Yeah, so then there's my granddad who died just before. Of course, then actually in the last couple of weeks, we've lost both of my grandmothers. So they, after a long journey with dementia, chose to go within 6 days of each other. So, yeah.
And how did that grief compare to the grief that you'd experienced before?
Really good question. I think for me, every single time, grief's got its own, people say it's got its own fingerprint. And that's what I've experienced, that every grief is different but interconnected in some ways. So actually losing them so close to each other, but also having very different relationships with them. One I was very close to, the other one a little bit more distant from the perspective as a teacher and very strict.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Different vibe.
Yeah.
But actually being able to witness it almost happening all at once, and I've been through every single emotion. I'm feeling very grounded, and as the waves of grief come, today is a normal day. But actually when I've had those days where it's not so normal and I'm feeling the roar of grief, actually experiencing how different they are and how they sit very differently within my body, and just bringing real awareness to that, and the fact that every single grief is so unique. But yeah, for me, my daughter is definitely my epicenter. So she is, when I feel it in my body, she's right over my heart.
Yeah.
And I feel her every day. Whereas with my granddad, and I'm sure with my nans, it will be where they'll pop in every so often to say hi.
Yeah.
And then off they go. But yeah, the pain of losing my daughter is definitely one that I feel every single day. But that's not to say that I don't experience joy and so much more alongside it.
And what does it, sorry, I hope you don't mind diving into this, but I'm really interested to know about, what does that feel like when you say it's raw and you're having a normal day versus a more of a griefy day? What does that feel like or look like?
So actually, I have dived into a lot of grief journaling to help me to really understand this. So when we lost our daughter, it was actually just before the induction and then her stillbirth. And my husband was like, right, you love writing, just do it. So I just wrote just how, I didn't know what to write. So I just wrote, this is how I'm feeling today. And actually I started to realize there wasn't like a set pattern, but there were definitely waves and ebbs and flows of it. So I realized there were some days where I was just a blubbering wreck, snotty, everything. And it was just, I'm going to barely get out of bed. And that's me today. Then there were other days where things just, I guess it felt like I could just step outside and actually take a deep breath in. I could do stuff that felt a bit normal, even though it was with the pain. And I realized that actually for me, I always talk about it from the perspective of going into the hospital and then going through her stillbirth, because you have to go through at the stage I was at, you have to go through a full, like, feel the contractions and the whole lot. But actually, the midwives thought I was so curious. They were all coming in for like really long chats, because I was sort of talking about the waves of the contractions of pain of giving birth, and the fact that actually that mirrored what I'd been journaling in the days before, that actually there was the real visceral pain that was like, I'm never going to get out of this alive. And then suddenly there was I can breathe.
Wow.
I feel human again. I can actually see that there is a path forward. So understanding that really helped me to appreciate that actually, just as with her birth, there was also going to be a path forwards where everything in this life is impermanent. And actually, I can handle this pain because I know that on the other side of it, there is normal, or a new normal that's coming.
Yeah, I think new normal is something that I always talk about, because especially, I'd say very soon after Dad died, it was always the new normal. And then obviously with COVID, it became the new normal. But normal's a funny word, because what does normal even mean, right? I mean, your normal may be what you're used to.
Yes.
But your life does look very differently after you lose someone. What was the hardest part of losing a child?
Oh my goodness, so much. The hardest part was the imagined future, the future that I had in my mind, those milestones that were all mapped out, and how vivid she was in my sight. And then having to let go of that. Like, she's still present, but she's present as the little baby version of her. So I think that was probably the hardest thing to really come to terms with and to understand, especially because in pregnancy, it changes you so much. And obviously with all the hormones and everything, and then a long journey to having her come into this world. So I think that was definitely the hardest. But actually in realizing that she's still a part of me. And I've seen stuff around how our DNA as mothers change when we're pregnant. There is a part of our babies that actually inextricably just becomes a part of us. So actually realizing that actually she's always with me, and I always feel her with me wherever I go. And I often, when I'm looking for, because her name is Ngako Raiona, which means lioness heart in my husband's Maori language. So when I'm calling on my lioness hearted courage, I remember everything that she journeyed through, and I call her spirit in to support me.
That's really beautiful. I can see you smiling, and you do have a twinkle in your eye. So, you know, there's some light that comes with this grief, right?
Yeah.
And we have to remember that. We're going to head to a break. Thank you for sharing. And then we're going to be back with Lisa Marshall. And hopefully we can both chat more about this really fun topic on Death of Funny Business. Joining us, we have Lisa Marshall. Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Hiya. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Sorry, I hope it wasn't a shock that Tash wasn't here, but Tanya's great. And we're really, really excited to have you. And sometimes I realise that with these Zoom calls, obviously people listening can't see. But anyway, really excited to have you on. Tanya, Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in?
Yeah, okay, so I'm from Glasgow and I've got 3 children. I've got 2 boys, 8, 6, and a little girl who is 3. She is in the background, so you might hear her running about.
Oh, she's welcome.
I'm so fortunate with 1 child, usually it's 3 running about. And just over 2.5 years ago, I lost my husband to suicide.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your husband. He's called Alan, isn't he?
Yeah, he's called Alan. We were together for 11 years. I met him when I was 19 and he was 26. We were both dentists. I was a student at the time I met him and he was a qualified dentist. So our first job, we kind of worked along the road from each other. But we were both dentists. He was just the life and soul of the party. He was a massive Glasgow Rangers fan. He went to every single game, followed them all around the world. Plenty of European trips when they had them. But he was just so much fun, and he was such a good dad. He was like the fun parent. He was the one that would play with the kids when they got home from work, when I was like getting the dinner and getting them to bed and things. So yeah, he was football mad, and he loved being a dad, and he was such a good friend as well. He was always on the phone to his friends. He just had so many friends, and I was always shouting on him to like help me, like Alan, and he was on the phone to all his friends. And you know what, it's quite funny because I don't speak to my friends on the phone. I would always text them or voice note them for like an hour, but he would actually pick up the phone and phone them all and like check in. So yeah, he's really missed by everybody.
Oh, Lisa, it's firstly like almost childhood sweethearts, which is adorable. And it's really beautiful to see you still smiling when you talk about him. When you talk about Alan, I think that's something that we talk about a lot on the show, you know, that death is a really, I mean, you've been through a lot, and I'm really sorry to hear what you've been through, and it must be really difficult raising 3 kids without Alan there. So that's really hard to hear and really difficult for you to go through that. But it's also so lovely that you're talking about those memories and that you're very much keeping him alive in these conversations. So I just think that's really important to note.
Well, thank you so much. It took a while to talk about it, to be honest. I think when you go through a suicide, all the memories and the happy memories, they got like wiped off when he died. It was the strangest thing, and I couldn't remember any nice things about him at all. So that's only really just started coming out, I'd say, the last few months. Sorry if you hear my daughter in the background.
That's okay. Oh. She's part of the call.
I know she is.
That's Sue. Do you want to talk a little bit about how he died? Is that something? And I know you're on social media, and you do talk about, you know, raising awareness of you know, mental health and also just death in itself and grief.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much I'm able to say, because when I do things in media, they're very strict, and like I can't mention the method how he died. They kind of say it is in case you get people copying that, and it's like encouraging others. So I'm not sure if I'm able to kind of say the method on here. It's completely up to you. Like, I'm quite an open book, and I'm happy to kind of talk about things.
It's completely up to you. It's your choice.
No, it's fine. He died by jumping in front of a train, and it was actually in the station where we live, so literally 5 minutes from my house. And when he done it, it was actually on his way home from work. So he had been to work that full day, and then we was meant to be home working a late night, and then the police came to the door. So it was a total shock to everybody. And the way he died, obviously, it was absolutely horrific, but he literally just went to work and never came home. I obviously never got to see him after anything like that. So for me, like, my brain, like, I couldn't actually process that he had died, because I never saw him die. And it was the strangest thing. And for my children as well, to just like, Daddy, he went to work fine, he's not coming home. It is the strangest thing ever. And it's absolutely horrific. Like, I think all the time about the train driver that was affected, the people on the platform. Is such a public way to die. And it's just so sad. It is. And I feel as well with suicide, people are remembered for how they died, their final act, by taking their own life, and almost not for the life that they lived before, which is so sad. So hopefully by talking about it, it's kind of raising awareness and kind of, as you say, keeping Alan's memory alive.
Oh, Lisa, well, just my heart goes out to you for everything that you've just shared. And as you shared, it's so complicated as well, that journey forwards. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what that journey forwards was like for you, in being able to process it and come to terms with it.
To be honest, the first year after he died, I was in complete shock, probably a bit of denial, and I'd very much disassociated. So I think people would look at me and see me out and about and be like, oh, she looks absolutely fine, when you're just in such a state of shock. There's just so much admin to sort out, and I really just kind of poured myself into the children and looking after them. But then when you do that, and I think most mums do this, they end up neglecting themselves. So I was actually very ill. I lost like 2 stone in weight, and I was still carrying baby weight when he died, but I was like unhealthily skinny, and I was constantly at the doctors with infections. So it really took a toll on my health, mental health especially as well. She's like,
I love that.
But so like about maybe I'd say a year to year and a half in, I was like, I need to really kind of look after myself a little bit. And with that kind of came like starting to exercise. That's been a huge part of my recovery. And then counselling as well. I found at the start, the counselling, they don't want you really doing it until 6 months down the line, which I get that. But then I still felt that when I done it, it was too soon. And I just felt my brain like shutting down during it, as if like I didn't want to like talk about it. I just couldn't talk about it. I couldn't say the word suicide. I couldn't like say Alan's name. I couldn't look at a picture. Like it was the strangest thing. But then I think like I'm 2.5 years in and I'm definitely feeling things now. I'm not as numb. Go, darling. So and his children definitely go, darling. That one, you want that one instead. So I think now like 2.5 years in, like I didn't cry the first year, but like I can cry now and yeah, so I think it's a big change, and I think it's when that numbness wears off. And in some ways I feel like the second and third year with grief, with anybody who's lost somebody, they can be harder because it's permanent and that kind of numbness wears off, and it's just like, right, this is it now. And once everything kind of your affairs get sorted, it's like that's you, this is your life now, you're on your own. But it's just about trying to like rebuild my life the best way I can. I haven't went back to work yet, but I've like really depended on friendships. I've rebuilt friendships, and I've got like lots of lovely friends, which I'm so grateful for. And just spending time with like family and friends and my children, and just trying to rebuild that life. Because before I just felt like I was like a mum and a wife, and that was it. So it's really about trying to find out who I am as well.
Oh, that's a really interesting space, isn't it, around the identity? Also, just loving how your daughter brought you chocolate. Slash bought chocolate for herself. She knew, she's like, Mummy needs chocolate. And
self-care.
Self-care. This is the self-care we need in grief. But I think that identity aspect is such a big one. So I'd love to hear a little bit more around that, of your journey to I suppose finding this new identity as you've moved forwards.
Absolutely. Like when Alan died, I felt like the version of me that was with him died as well. Like you're not the same person as soon as you lose your spouse, because you're for so long, 11 years, I was with a partner, I was with somebody else obviously, and you build a life together. And I felt because he was older than me, I felt quite like maybe he protected me a little bit, and I felt like he was kind of more like maybe mature, and I wasn't independent at all. I just basically went from my mum and dad's house to living with him. I'd never really been on my own before in my entire life, so it was absolutely a huge shock to be like on my own and a single mum as well. So just trying to find yourself as well. And then I think I felt like I wasn't really strong enough to get through a suicide loss. So you have to almost like change yourself and your personality to get through it. So it absolutely has toughened me up, but it's also made me so much more empathetic and like sympathetic to others as well. And I think more caring, but then also I've got like a lot more boundaries in place.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah, you have
so important to have those boundaries. I think that like your whole perspective changes when you lose someone, and it's you learn what's important to you as well. But how did you cope with not being able to kind of have that, I guess, that closure to say goodbye? And also, what does closure actually mean to you?
It's really difficult, and I think that's the difference with a suicide loss and another loss, is that there's no closure, there's no answers. I literally like turned the house upside down looking for a note, and I thought that if I had this note, then I would get the answer I'm looking for and I could move on. But since I've met other people affected by suicide, they've kind of said to me that the notes almost brought out more questions, and there's nothing on that can be good enough for actually someone taking their own life. So I feel like the closure I've really had to make peace with. It wasn't anything to do with me, it was everything to do with him. And that's really something, because I think I really did blame myself. Like, how did I not notice this?
Yeah, of course.
How did I live with somebody and not see that they were struggling? I just really felt terrible. And I think the effect that it has on a spouse as well, like I felt personally like really, really rejected, worthless, just no self-esteem at all. And I've had to really build that back up, because that's kind of setting you up for kind of toxic relationships in the future. Yeah. And also brings out any kind of childhood traumas and stuff that you went through as well. So the closure, I'm never going to get that closure, because the only person that could give me the reasons is dead. And that's the thing with a suicide. So you have had to just make peace that I'm not going to get answers, but that's okay. And I just have to try and make peace, because I'm one of these people, I like to know everything, I like to plan, and you can, and I've had to really kind of change that about myself as well.
Yeah, but you said that you've had you know, some really great friends and family around you, which makes me really happy to hear, because I know that sometimes friends and family can actually do the opposite, and they can run away because they don't know what to say, or it becomes too much. Have you dealt with any of those situations? Have you had anyone who said the wrong thing? If so, what did they say? Or did you really have a good solid network around you?
I think the thing is, you're right, like there is like kind of wrong things to say, but I think in the moment people don't really think, and I'm one of the people as well, like I don't always think before I speak. So I remember the day after, it was like my auntie asked me, she was like, are you going to be able to stay in your house? Are you going to have to downsize? And you don't want to be thinking that at that time, like but it's funny, people were so interested financially in you and like what's going on, how are you going to cope, like it's crazy, like people are like focused on that rather than the kind of well-being of like everything as well. But yeah, I'm trying to think as well, people say as well, like at least the kids are young and not older when this happened, but then I always think they would have got more time with them had it happened when they were older. But it's difficult, it's really difficult, and I try not to take too much offence to it, but it's made me more aware of what I say to people that have lost somebody before.
Yeah
I definitely feel that. For me as well, grief has been my educator in how to show up for others, and actually that it's okay just to show up and say, I'm just going to sit and listen. In fact, it's great to do just that. And obviously with your children, and your daughter is right here, such a big part of everything for you. And I've seen that you've spoken as well around how you've spoken to them about Alan, about obviously how he died. And I'd love to hear just a little bit about that, of how you managed that, and how perhaps things have shifted as well as your children have got maybe a little bit older.
Definitely. So my daughter was only 10 months at the time, and she's 3 now, but she's quite delayed speaking. So she's got a few words, but I've not had to have that conversation with her yet. But my 2 boys were 4 and 6 at the time when Alan died. And that night, when it was the transport police that came and told me that he had died, I couldn't tell them that he had died. I couldn't. I just said it first. It was, I think looking back, it was wrong, but I said, oh, he's in hospital. He's been in an accident on a train, but he's in hospital. And then I got the Reverend round the next day, and she helped me tell them that he had died. And for 2 years, best part of 2 years, they just thought that it was an accident at the train station, and they were 4 and 6. They couldn't really understand suicide. But then there was, I went to a little grief group with children there present, and that kind of gave me the confidence, probably as well as talking on social media about it as well, to actually tell them this was intentional and it was a suicide. And my oldest son, who's 8, he completely understood it. My youngest son is kind of a little bit unsure about it. But obviously I kind of felt like you were going through telling them that he had died all over again. It was another layer of grief as well, because they were upset and asking why. And I feel that it's a question I'm going to get throughout my whole life, and probably even when they're teenagers and understand it more and more about the world as well. So I feel like I'm a lot more open about it, because to be honest, I didn't really talk about their dad at all unless they brought him up. Whereas now, like, I definitely welcome those kind of questions, and anytime they want to talk about their dad or see pictures and videos, because they need to be comfortable talking about anything, because obviously their dad wasn't, and he couldn't open up. Whereas I want my boys especially to know that it's okay to talk and it's okay to show emotion, and I just want them to be able to like talk to me. So I'm a lot more open about it, and I've joined them like Widowed and Young, and I know other families that have got children in the situation. I kind of meet up with them sometimes, and I always kind of say, look, oh, they don't have a dad either, because you know they are the only ones in the class that is in this situation and things and stuff. So it is difficult for them, definitely.
Yeah, I think that what's really powerful, well, everything that you shared is so powerful, is how you're meeting your children at each of their development stages, and with that acknowledgement actually that it's a process, and at each different stage there's going to be a different understanding that can be opened up, but also the power of that peer support. Because I remember reading somewhere a statistic where I think it's 1 in 25 children have lost a parent or a caregiver or a sibling. And you think that's, to your point, Lisa, that's one person in every class. Yeah. But actually to not have spaces where, and it sounds like your children have got wonderful spaces where actually they can connect with others and actually speak about their grief, is so powerful.
Absolutely. And I just feel they don't want to talk about that to their friends in school.
Yeah.
They just want to be, just like, sorry, she's actually opened the door. I don't know who it is. was an Amazon delivery, sorry. That is fine, thank you. Thank you. But through Widow and Young, I actually met like a few families with children, and I felt more comfortable talking with peer support. I go to a suicide bereavement group, a place called Tear. So I think when my children meet other people, they're like, they just feel more comfortable talking, and they just get it, and there's like an understanding without saying anything.
How did, you don't have to answer this, but how did the school respond to this? Because I talk a lot about education for children and how this news should be delivered, and I'm interested to know precisely how this news was delivered as well to your children, because I think that how does a child grasp what's happened? I think as adults we talk about it, but how does a child process that? What does that look like?
I don't think children do grasp it. The school told me that it would take months for them to process it, and it would just be maybe like 6 months during the line. They would just kind of realise, oh, they're not coming home, and that's it, unfortunately. But the school were really, really supportive. That's Henry's flamenco Lego. That's Henry. Can you put a table for him, darling? You put a table. So the school, they do in Scotland, they do seasons for growth, and that's like children that have been through any trauma. So a lot of children going through divorces and any bereavement at all. Obviously grandparents are a big one, because a lot of times grandparents are doing a lot of childcare for the kids, and they're just as close to grandparents as they are parents now, children. But the schools, they are definitely helping. And when I sent the kids back to school the next day, the teachers knew before my son that their dad had died, which was really difficult. And because it was so local, and because it was so shocking as well, it was just really difficult, because the teachers, they were just upset, nursery staff upset, and it happened like 5 minutes from the school. And obviously people would hear the night before, like, oh, somebody's died at train station, but you would never think, oh, that's Henry's dad, definitely. But I think each child's different, and everybody has to, just cater to that child. My eldest son is actually on the spectrum as well, so that's difficult, because he doesn't process emotion the same way as his brother, who's neurotypical. He suppressed a lot of emotion, and he struggled to let out his grief. He never cried properly until 6 months down the line. He's very, very blunt about everything, and sometimes, his brother would ask, like, where's daddy? And then Henry would be like, he's dead, he's not coming back, which is very, very blunt. So I feel it's like every child's different, and they need that kind of level of care. And I feel it's like a lifelong thing with counselling. And when I do counselling, I ask a lot of questions with my children as well. But children, they are very, very resilient. And when people see us out and about, we just look like a normal family. They're all doing really, really good, definitely, including Sophia right next to me.
No, that's really nice. It's really nice to hear.
I'm so sorry.
And you're obviously sharing this on social media. Like, what made you think one day, I'm going to document this and go public with what's happening in my life?
So basically, Sherry meant she's got a microphone too now.
Oh, you can talk.
She was on too. So basically, I was looking for a channel that was somebody similar to myself. And I did find a lot of widows, but they were further down their journeys to me. And that quite often as well, they were like remarried, and they were just at a different kind of stage in their life. And a lot of widows as well, it's just so different when it's like a illness. Well, obviously suicide's a mental illness, but a physical illness. So I couldn't find anybody coming in.
Hello.
Hi.
And then I just kind of felt like when I had my peer support, I'd done a fundraiser and I raised quite a lot of money for charity, and I was like, you know what, people might be supportive, because before I started social media, I really just hid away, and I feel really bad saying this, but I was almost like ashamed of like my story and what had happened, and I was felt uncomfortable telling people, but I feel like you kind of need to own it, because it is a very isolating place.
Absolutely.
And not everybody in my family agrees with like what I'm doing, and that they have big concerns, sharing my story on social media. But I think it helps me kind of process things as well, and connecting with other widows, other families.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people are going to be watching it going, I've been through it as well. Not everyone perhaps wants to post on social media, but it's absolutely fine. But the fact that you, Lisa, you seem like a very, very strong woman and mother. And it's absolutely amazing that you're willing to put yourself out there and tell people what you're going through, because it's helping people as well that don't necessarily, outside that bubble that you're in and outside that grief club. And I think it's really great that we can go, it's fine, so happy that you haven't gone through this, but let me let you into what we're going through on a daily basis, you know? So yeah, that was more of a, it's brilliant, but I was just intrigued to know why it was that you decided to go on social media. And also, is it affecting you at all? Like, are you sometimes thinking, I don't want to post today because I'm just feeling really, really rubbish?
Definitely, and I think that's the thing as well, because it's just such a niche that I'm in, and I don't really have anyone telling me what to do but myself. There's days where I'm like, I don't want to go on social media, I don't want to film anything, I don't want to post anything. So there's days that I have that, and I don't need to. And especially like I'm people message me, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's so nice. And I actually get quite a lot of messages from people that were children at the time this happened to them, and that like gives me a lot of hope for my kids in the future as well. I mean, give each other advice, but I need to make sure I've got enough time to actually, sit and write back to them, because they're obviously sharing sensitive information. But yeah, I definitely take time off when I need to, and I think that's just so healthy for anybody. And even, I'm sure you can relate as well, like big events like Christmas and things, like going on social media the first time after you lose somebody, it's really, really hard. It's really hard. It makes you feel awful about yourself. So I think take time off when you need, definitely, and that's what I do.
Oh, I love that. That's so important. I can really feel that because I'm a bereaved mother and share a lot of my story online. And for me, actually, what really resonated was also in that when you started, but also that acknowledgement of when you need to take time off. Because mine is a business now, but actually there's always that thing of you should be posting every single day. But actually with that acknowledgement, you mentioned boundaries earlier, of the boundaries you put in as well in the digital space, I think is so important for anyone sharing their story. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And just, before we say our goodbye, I'd love to know how you keep Alan's memory alive in your family and with your children as they grow up.
With the children, I really just go, as one to be right now, I really just go with how they kind of feel. So the past few years at Christmas time, I've had his little decoration, and my eldest son didn't want it on the tree. So I always give them the option if they want the kind of decoration on the tree. There isn't any photos up in my house, but my younger son has actually asked for a picture of his dad in his room, so I'm going to get that for him. But my oldest son right now doesn't want that. And the thing is as well, Alan wasn't really big on celebrations. He wasn't big on birthdays, Christmas Day, he would often work it. He wasn't really big on things like that. But for me, like, it's more to football. Like when Rangers, I kind of just don't really acknowledge Rangers at all. But I just kind of go with the kids, to be honest. I like don't force them to do anything they don't want to do. But little balloons and like the kind of dates, if they want to do that, little stones and decorating them so they can kind of get art into it as well. And they haven't been to visit his grave, but I've always kind of mentioned that to them as well. It's really difficult because I feel like, they should be doing this, but actually they might not just be ready for it as well. And I wasn't ready for a few years as well, so I feel we maybe don't do as much to keep his memory alive right now, but hopefully in the future we will.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Meeting your kids exactly where they are at each stage, but also that signposting that you're doing about actually you can go and visit his grave. So powerful. Lisa, I'm so inspired by you. And
there's no right or wrong. I think that's the thing we have to remember, right? It's what's right for you and what's right for your kids. And we just have to take every day as it comes.
Exactly.
And not, put those boundaries up, but also not, expect too much of ourselves. We're doing great and you're doing great. So yeah, really, really appreciate you coming to chat to us. Enjoy your chocolate, the two of you.
Not for me,
we're going to go to a break. But yeah, thank you so much, Lisa Marshall, for joining us. Do you want to let us know where we can find you on socials if we want to hear more about what you're posting on there?
That's fine. You can find me on the Widow Diaries. It's the_Widow Diaries. I'm on Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
That was a really powerful chat. And yeah, great woman. She's positive, strong, but been through a hell of a lot of shit.
Yeah, I love just how open Lisa is to share everything and how much she'll be helping other people through that. Because I think particularly when it comes to suicide, because it's what they call a disenfranchised grief. So it's one that is often not sort of accepted and acknowledged as it should be in society, and that can cause a lot of people to feel so isolated and lonely.
Why is it not accepted in the same way?
I think there's a stigma. And similarly actually with baby loss, there's a few different, actually pet loss is one.
Come back to that.
Coming back into pet loss. But there's certain we're terrible. I always think about, in general, at our base level, we're terrible at acknowledging death and grief as a culture, society as a whole, and we're getting better, But there are certain ones where I think it's when it's really difficult for people to be able to understand how, again, that thing of I don't know what to say, but the problem is most people, and like you did at the start of the conversation, be like, oh my goodness, and lean in, a lot of people disappear. And I think that's a real problem that we've got, and that leaves so many people feeling so isolated and so lonely when there's a real stigma around certain types of loss.
I get it. I don't get the stigma, but I get the I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I have gone through losing my dad. But I think that I relate really well to other people who have lost a parent, because I'm like, I get it. I know that we've been through this, probably been through quite similar milestones and through similar experiences in our grief journey. So for Tash and I, there's definitely like synergy there. Yeah. You know, it's fucking hard, isn't it, when you get a partner and you can't tell your parent, you know, your dad or your mum about it. It's really frustrating when I don't know, you kind of left on your own with your brother and you have to deal with your brother and you haven't got your dad there. And I think there is definitely quite a lot of similarities. But I guess I struggle with understanding other people's grief. Doesn't mean there's not a space for it. It doesn't mean that I don't care or can connect. It's just different. And I think that sometimes that difference can be a difficult space to acknowledge. And I think that that's what I mean by stigma in terms of, for me, in terms of what I would maybe find it more difficult to understand what to say to you who's obviously lost a child, or someone has lost someone to suicide, because I don't know what that's like. But that's why we're here to ask questions, right?
Exactly. And I think this is where, I mean, I'm not saying everybody listening, go get your own radio show about death and grief. That's how you do it. But actually, the more that we can, just sit and listen to each other, that is really what we need as a society, because that's how we it's impossible for us to put ourselves into other people's shoes. But to just sit and listen also does show that this happens, these different types of loss, they all happen. And actually there is a space for people to talk about it. And actually I've always found, because if I take myself back to my pre-grief era, I was that person who would be like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to talk about this. But actually, it's not as scary as it seems. Like Lisa is modelling that so beautifully. Of actually, most of us, we all have to do what feels right for us in the moment. But most of us are like, actually, I really want to talk about Alan, my husband, and actually how much he meant to me. But also, I want to talk about how he died. And all of these parts are so important. So, I think it's just about us just chatting. Grab a cup of coffee. A glass of wine. Have a chat.
For me, it's a glass of wine. All the tears come. All the tears, all the gin, all the tears come out.
And actually, I'm really curious to know as well for you with your dad, because you lost him when you were young.
I was 18.
18, so it's so young.
I'm 26 now. So I feel like I've been grieving a lot. It's been a while. But fuck me, the first 2, 3, 4 years are really, really tough. 5, 6. Where are we? 7.
All at 1, 2, 3, 4,
it's all quite tough, but no, it's there's so many stages. I look back and I go, God, I really thought I had grieved, and then I look back and I went, no, I really hadn't. I hadn't even begun the process. I had to some extent, but the real deep nitty gritty grief, the you know the bit that sits right deep inside you, the pain, you know, that's really hard to unlock and unleash and to let out. I think that can only sometimes come with time. I think.
And have you obviously you've got Tash. Have you found, by way of other people, have there been good people? Because I think that's the thing. Again, we just think, oh well, it's 6 months, it's a year. But to your point, the conversations need to continue. And have you had people who continue to lean in and just there to listen? And...
like my good friends. I don't have loads and loads of friends. I don't want loads and loads of friends.
I'm the same.
I've got some really, really good best mates, solid mates that I can always rely on and I can always call or talk to. So I feel very, very grateful for that. But they came about, you know, because they stuck around. They didn't fuck off when my dad died, which so many people did. And I'm, you know, I'm grateful for them for that, because they had to put up with quite a lot. They really did. So they've been a great support network and not really gone through what I've gone through. I think that's why Tash and I connect so well. My boyfriend lost his dad, so he died in 2018 as well, which was crazy. I mean, we met last year and we were both like, on our first date, we were like, he's like, I lost my dad. I was like, no fucking way, same. Snap. Yeah, I laughed about it. It's really tough. It was really tough. But it's really nice to be able to connect with him and talk about it with him. I always say we never really trauma bonded. That was my thing, and I don't really like the word trauma bond anyway. But we never made sure that was the center piece of our relationship. But I think that it is something that we can both. It's common ground, isn't it? So yeah, I've had good people around me.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important, isn't it? And really, grief does show you who the real ones are. Yeah. In our life.
Yeah. How about you? Are you still with your kind of strong friendship group?
Yeah, definitely people have come in who I didn't even think of, and they just showed up from day one. And then you're like, wow, you mean a lot to me. Yeah. And then there are those other ones where you're just like, all right, piss off. I'm done. I'm doing the Gwyneth Paltrow consciously uncoupling from you. Yeah. And that's
boundaries.
That's that. Yeah, but it does make me think as well when you think about mental health as well, sort of bringing that into the space of this conversation. Again, how important it is that we show up for each other, because actually these are the conversations, that person who shows up and says, I'm listening and I'm here to hold you, as you shared, in the raw and the difficult and whatever is coming up in that volcano, that can really make a difference as well in someone's life, because it's just so important in any sense of our mental health that we can just talk about it.
And understand what they need in that time as well. You know, do you want me to listen?
Yes.
Or do you want me to come up with a mind map for you? Do you want to sit and draw together? Do you want to sit and listen to a playlist? I think it's providing a space for someone who is grieving, but with lots of options.
Yes.
You know, it's like having that menu, but what do we want to do? What do you want from me? And I think that's what a good friend is as well.
Oh, I love that. I love the menu. Yes. We need to educate people on what this menu could be, because as you said,
I write a menu, you know? Yeah, a kind of grief situational grief menu.
Yes.
I was sitting on the train the other day and just like burst into tears. And like Joey, my boyfriend, was like, what do you want? Do you want me to listen? Or do you want to talk about it? And it was just nice to have, not to feel. I was like, I just want you to shut up, and I just want to rant and cry. I felt so good for it, and like that was grief-related stuff. That was all sorts of stuff involved in my brain at that point. But having good people around you definitely make a big difference, and it makes me happy when I see that other people have that too.
Oh, I love that. And I suppose as well, one thing as well that's just sprung to mind that feels really important in this conversation as well to say is that if anyone's listening and is struggling with your mental health, just to remember as well, there's places that you can go, including in crisis. Obviously the Samaritans and just in general, Samaritans and other organisations are always there for you.
Yeah, no one should be alone through this. Oh my God, like we all need a shoulder to cry on, or whatever that support looks like.
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
Well, I have to wrap up in a minute, but I just want to say thank you so much for jumping in last minute, literally an hour before the show or something. It was and then it was a bit chaotic start, but it was great to be able to like properly meet you live on air, and to hear about what you've been through and your story. And it sounds like you've got lots of exciting plans ahead, some of which you can't talk about. So. But all in this kind of grief world.
Yes, exactly that. And I've also got my podcast Death on the Daily as well.
Death on the Daily.
If anyone wants to come tune into me chatting away with other people or myself, then you can find me over there.
Absolutely. Is that you're on Instagram and all that?
I'm on Instagram.
All that shebang.
Yeah, exactly. Find me
amazing. Well, thank you so much to Lisa Marshall for joining us, and thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week on Death of Funny Business, and hopefully Tash has cleared up her cough by that point. But if not, we'll see you next week. Bye.